The PIMO is someone who is physically in the organization but has mentally checked out. And the reason they stay in when they don't actually believe is Jehovah's Witnesses have a long-standing history of shunning people who leave, including members of one's own family. Like, no matter what they say, no matter what official statement they put out, it is a mandate. There is a long-standing culture in the Jehovah's Witnesses that you do not maintain a relationship with that family member who leaves. And this shunning practice, or the shunning culture, has destroyed countless families in the organization for generations, and it's the sole reason people stay when they don't actually believe. So in this video, I want to be clear that I'm not referring to PIMOs who are minors or dependents, and also, a lot of PIMOs have a game plan. Like, they can't leave immediately for whatever reason, but they're building up a support network, they're saving money, they eventually have a plan to leave. In this video, I'm addressing a very specific type of PIMO, the PIMO who's basically coasting, sort of vacillating between thoughts of freedom and a sense of obligation that they have to their very devout family. So here are 5 very specific family scenarios that PIMOs have to deal with and the possible ramifications for each. So this one's probably the most common one that you hear, the most common situation. Both parents are extremely devout. Their parents are most likely boomers who've been loyal to the organization for decades. And of course, you have Gen X parents who are fully indoctrinated and their kids want the hell out. But I've talked about this before. Boomer Jehovah's Witnesses specifically have seen everything under the sun, which I believe makes them a very unique cohort when you're dealing with them as a PIMO. Like, if your parents, like mine, are still devout to this day, that means that they had to live through and rationalize the following events. 1975, the organization heavily implied that Armageddon would come in 1975, even going so far as to encourage Jehovah's Witnesses to quit their jobs, sell their homes, and even refrain from having children or going to college. And they never apologized or took responsibility for this disaster. The generations teaching, in extremely distilled, simplified terms. They were basically told that if grandma and grandpa are still alive in the 90s, it was a good sign the end was around the corner. Then you had the tech boom. Aside from denouncing the internet, a potential source of danger, it's not so much about the technology itself, since the organization would be forced to evolve and adapt. Instead, the tech boom and subsequent onslaught of social media represents the inevitable passing of time and a refusal to acknowledge their own irrelevance with each passing year. But it gets even worse. Boomers are now being fire-hosed with policy changes in the past year or two that they're not allowed to question. You have to understand these were rules for decades. Basically, the organization is changing up all these things that used to be hardline rules. They're not allowed to question any of it. And frankly, many of them wouldn't because they're too far gone. The cope is hard. And if this describes your parents, you're up against 2 people who are carrying an astronomical level of denial. You see, it doesn't matter if your parents could be secretly awake. All right. Even the most Pollyanna among them have expressed doubt over something somewhere along the way. They're just part of that old guard who has been conditioned their entire lives to stay faithful until death. You know this, to stay faithful until death so they can win their prize. Okay, there's ignorance, like they actually believe this stuff, and then there's willful ignorance. And if you suspect it's the latter, you're actually inadvertently repeating the exact same pattern. You know better. But you are settling for conditional love. Just like your parents might be secretly awake, who knows? Their identity, their reputation, all those things are going to prioritize the organization over you every time. Their loyalty will always be to the organization. Whatever. It's fine if you know what you're doing. Like, it is what it is. At least you acknowledge it. But if you're the type of PIMO who's always holding out hope, just waiting around on pins and needles that one day mom and dad will wake up, or maybe you're just in a constant state of aggravation and resentment, you might want to, and I mean this in all sincerity, with your well-being in mind, you might want to start spending less time focusing on your parents' denial and start addressing your own. Right, this is going to sound weird, but I've seen it happen. There are PIMOs who were children of divorce. One parent stayed a witness, the other parent didn't, and they wind up favoring the witness parent. Like, it was a really bad divorce, and the witness parent was actually the stable parent. Like, if I'm being completely honest and fair, it has happened. I know there's tons of stories of it being the other way around, where the witness parent is a lunatic, tries to pit the child against their non-believing parent, and brainwashes them and turns them against the stable, good, non-believing parent. Trust me, I have plenty of stories about that. Right? That is alive and well within the organization. Sometimes in these situations, it ends up being the witness parent who's the good, stable parent. They deserve the credit for being a good parent. Because the PIMO is bonded to that parent, understandably so, they now feel forever obligated or indebted to them. Like, oh, I'm awake, but I can't leave, it'll kill mom. That's where they found love and validation, and that was the parent that provided peace. That's tough to be in that spot. That's a tough pill to swallow, to not believe in the organization anymore or lose your faith, but you have such a strong bond with the believing parent. That's got to be really complicated. But then I've seen a few crazy situations where the parents are together, but like one parent is inactive or flaky, or maybe was never a believer, doesn't believe it at all, is not a practicing witness. But the marital dynamics are so weird and messy that they will actually defer to the witness parent, like to keep the peace in the marriage. So like literally they'll sell their own kid out just so they don't get shit from this one. That's insane. So like you got an active, devout parent who's a hard ass and is prepared to shun you. You got the other parent over here just rolling with it. That is peak dysfunction. So this is another common PIMO situation. I've had several PIMOs tell me over the years that they're just waiting for mom or dad to pass and then they're getting the hell out. But here's the thing, they say that specifically despite the fact that the other parent is still alive and heavily involved. They just don't feel the same loyalty or obligation to that parent. But then the parent dies and then they're still PIMO. I thought this was going to be your big moment. What are you waiting for? And I don't want to hear, oh, well, they felt obligated. You just don't understand. Now it's really going to put a strain on the family. The family's going to really feel abandoned. That was the whole point. You didn't care about this other parent. I mean, really, what was all that big talk? You didn't care about this parent. It was the other parent you cared about. You didn't want to crush them. That was your favorite parent. Your favorite parent's been dead for 10 years, man. What are you waiting on? That's why you were PIMO in the first place. Now what's your excuse? And then, you got the people who do follow through and leave. I don't want your parents to die. That's not my point. But if this describes your situation, I mean, the only logical question is this imminent? Like, is this something that I don't understand? Is this something that's coming in the next few years? Seriously, like, is this something you anticipate? I'm trying to understand. Is this something you anticipate is about to happen? Like your parent is sick? Because if this is your strategy, like, I get it. You don't want to hurt them. They're on their way out. But also, it's just like, how many years of your life are you willing to put on hold for a parent who I guarantee you, I'm sorry to say, if they knew how you really felt, wouldn't hesitate to curse you with their last dying breath? And how do you reconcile that? So sometimes the child is devout and the parent is a PIMO. The parent woke up. You raised them a little too well. They followed in your footsteps and boom, you turn PIMO. That's a crazy spot to be in. So the parents I've spoken to about this, who've dealt with this situation, a lot of them express a tremendous sense of guilt. Like, I can't believe I raised my kid in this. I feel so guilty for raising them in the organization and now they're just fully in. And some say it was actually good for their family at the time for whatever reason. Like being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, the family being Jehovah's Witnesses was good for their family, but also they feel like that doesn't justify raising them in a lie. And, I feel like I failed as a parent. And my response to that, just my 2 cents, is that you didn't know any better. You did what you thought was the right thing to do. Like, the only way you fail me as a parent is if you know it's a cult, you know what you're doing, that willful ignorance, and you go against your instincts as a parent, against your better judgment, and shun me anyway. That's how you fail me as a parent. So some of these parents, they're just beating themselves up, over lost time. But the good news is in a lot of cases, these kids do wake up. And so it's all good. Their relationship stays intact. But yeah, sometimes the kids are fully in and they end up shunning their parents. It's crazy. The parents are now the dangerous influence. Like, the sons become elders. They serve in some capacity and then they get married and have kids. And then it just mushrooms into this larger problem that wouldn't have been an issue. Sort of this whole trickle-down effect. And that's why I say, if you're a PIMO with little kids right now and both of you guys are awake, you and your spouse are both awake in an ideal situation. You and your spouse are both awake. You got kids. Get out now. I mean that. Get out now, because the organization hasn't made inroads into their little brain yet. When they're that little, it's not going to stick. They're going to get over it, whatever they remember, real fast. You don't want the organization to get their hooks in, and then it's going to be too difficult later on. And I know somebody's going to get pissed when I say this. I don't care. Grandma and grandpa, they're on their way out. Right? You really got to think about this. If you stay for grandma and grandpa and all the extended family, not only are you training your child that they have to be something they're not to earn love, like you and I had to, but you're also knowingly, actively building an illusory community. You're essentially creating this fake community that will, mark my words, be prepared to turn on them and make the fallout that much worse. Got grandma, grandpa, my brothers and sisters, so they got their aunts, uncles, cousins. There's 25 of us or 30 of us or whatever. And that's 25 or 30 that they're going to lose like that. They grow up to be 17, 22 or whatever, and then they have doubts. They become PIMO and they want to leave. all those family members will turn on them. And frankly, you had a hand in that. Instead of ripping off the Band-Aid early and protecting your kids. But generally speaking, let's say you're an older parent, your kids are grown, they're still in the organization, they're devout, but they're willing to talk to you. It's awesome. Keep that connection going. They might wake up, you never know. Right, so there's the PIMO and then there's the PIMI, someone who's physically in, mentally in. They're fully indoctrinated. If your spouse is PIMI and you're awake, that's rough. And you got kids together, that's even worse. So what tends to happen is the husband wakes up and the wife is PIMI. This usually has one of two outcomes. She either freaks out, oh my God, he's the bad guy, I have to protect the kids. She's this drama queen that goes to the elders get involved in their marriage. She gets all these people rallying around her to support her. Or it could be that the husband, he becomes inactive. He doesn't exactly express his doubts to his wife. Maybe she senses it. I don't know. They have their own marital dynamics going on. But the bottom line is she's disappointed, obviously, that he's not supporting her at the meetings. She knows something's going on. But she doesn't necessarily freak out. She just keeps taking the kids to the meetings. He's very loving and doesn't push her. He makes it clear that he still loves her very much, still supports her. It's just a strain on the marriage. This one's rough. If you're in this situation, you do what you got to do. And a lot of times the wife does wake up. He doesn't push her and just leave her be, and then she comes around. But like I said before, if you guys are coming from a united front, you're both awake, that's a totally different story. Your kids are little, get out. Let the chips fall where they may with your family. All right, so if you're a PIMO watching this, you don't want to disappoint your parents, bring shame on the family, make their life harder. You don't want to rock the boat, but you're a PIMO. You're awake and you're miserable. You're sick of walking on eggshells. Feel the resentment growing with each passing year. Here are a few questions I want you to ask yourself. What do I gain by taking my parents' feelings into consideration, knowing they wouldn't do the same for me? What happens if my family member never wakes up? What am I getting from this relationship that I'm afraid to lose? And what does that say about the other person? How would my life improve if, for once, I chose to prioritize my own needs? I'm really sorry you're going through this. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm qualified to speak on this subject because I'm living it. If you would like more tips and guidelines on how to set boundaries within the context of your situation with your family, I talk about this subject extensively in my new book, Burning Down the House: Coping with Toxic Family Dynamics, Estrangement, and Rebuilding Your Life. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you find this content helpful, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.